Well, hey guys, welcome back to another episode on the Flowmax car. Now this episode, I want to talk about the engine build. I planned to do this video over a month ago, actually since I've been living here in my sister's house. However, the day that I did the trans swap costs breakdown video was the day I did that little bit of a power skid. And ever since then, I've noticed a little bit of a knock. And I kind of wanted to make sure that it was an engine knock, or it was piston slap, or what it was before I actually did a video on the engine build costs. Because I know there's going to be a lot of people that want to follow the engine build, and a lot of people that want to build one of these engines on the cheap. And I wanted to kind of work out if I've done it okay, or if there's a problem with what I've done. And I think there's a problem. Although I'm not sure, and whether it's a big problem or if it's something that I never need to worry about, I don't know yet. I've been very, very short of time, as I'm sure a lot of you guys understand, and I haven't had much time to thrash this engine. Now, I actually picked it up out of storage yesterday, and I've done 100 kilometers in it yesterday, and the noise doesn't change. The noise is always there. It is worse when it's cold. In fact, let me try and see if I can capture it on camera for you guys, because I've been trying to capture it in the car and I just can't get it. But the engine's pretty cold. Let's take it for a spin and we'll see if we can make that noise. All right, so we've got a microphone there. We'll see if it picks it up. Let's see if we lose the microphone. That'll be annoying. Okay guys, I've just had a quick look on the GoPro footage and I think I can hear that noise. We'll see how it works in the edit, but I wanted to be honest about that noise. Now, I had never noticed that noise until after I did the 8 HP swap breakdown costs video, which I'll put a link to up in the corner, because that's just another video of a large chunk of money that got spent on this car. And it wasn't until the night that I was driving this car back to storage to go and collect my single turbo that had just had the exhaust fitted, that I actually heard this new knock. Now, this knock may have been there from day one, but because I had the Empire exhaust on the car, which was really loud, I just couldn't hear it. And we also had the issue with a noisy power steering pump. The power steering pump was actually knocking as well. And to make things even worse, it's also got a noisy air conditioning compressor. And if I run the AC on this car, I can't hear that knock. If I have the window closed, I can't hear the knock. It's a very, very faint knock. I think it's piston slap, but I don't know. But just so that everyone here knows about it, I have done a fair bit of research, reading, trying to find people with similar noises. And I think it's either piston knock caused by poor piston to cylinder bore clearance, or it could be loose torque converter bolts. So this has the AHP swap. It was all done at a very rushed time in my life, and I couldn't take as much care with it as I would have liked. And there is a chance that they're loose. I don't know. I can't check it. I can't get the car up in the air. I was hoping to do it today, but I have not had the chance to do it. So it's either that. That's what I think it is. Unless it's like it could be a pulley. It could be a pulley knocking. It could be the turbo. It could be so many things, but I haven't worked it out yet. But just so everybody knows, there's something weird about the engine if you're going to follow this really weird way to build an N54. Now, the catch side to all this, the car has done a 5.5 second 100 to 200. It's full weight. That was with the 8 HP, but that's without the 8 HP in sort of race mode. Turns out the 8 HP needs a rebuild as well because of worn clutches, but we've mentioned that. So I think even at this power level, in a good DA, we've got a potential to do a low 5 second 100 to 200 time. It was a 5.52 from memory on the Draggy, and that's friggin' fast. That is... It's got to be around 700 wheel horsepower, real 700 horsepower. However, I haven't put it on a dyno, so we don't know, but it's definitely fast. It was well, actually, this is still faster than my single turbo car. However, we've blown that engine up as well. There's a theme on this channel. It's breaking N54s and spending lots of money. But anyway, all that, keep that in mind. We've got a knock. It does make a lot of power. In fact, the way that we're running this car at the moment, it's running on about 13.5 degrees of timing and 30 PSI. They're the highlight numbers. This tune is not the kill map. and I shouldn't say the kill map, but this isn't the most aggressive map that I have had on the built motor. I'm actually running one map down, and that's just because it comes on a boost a little bit more lazy. These Flowmax turbos pump so much air so low in the RPM. On the other map, I was just blowing the AR1s off at 100 k's an hour rolling on. Like, it was just so aggressive. It was too much power to drive it with semi-slicks. At the moment, on this map, it's still too much power. It just blows the standard Dunlop Sports Max tyres off, but there's a little bit of hope. There's a little bit of hope there. It's crazy how much power it makes. It does make a lot of power. This is a more aggressive tune than what the original motor was running on when we blew it up. I think this motor is stronger than an original one, but it does knock. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Now, what does it actually cost? So the reason this is dodgy, and the reason I don't recommend it, is because I did this on such a half-assed attempt. There is no way a mechanic's going to let you do it this way. But this is what I spent on upgrade parts. That's probably the best way to put it. So the max beating rods, actually these were sponsored, but at the time you could get them for 600 Australian dollars. So it was $600 for a set of 6 max beating rods, which are just a stronger con rod, and you put them next to a standard one, and I'll put a link to the video where I compared standard rods and the max beating rods and the China rods up in the corner. So I also ordered a set of AMP44 pistons from Russia. They were 1,060 Australian dollars landed. I ordered a set of ACL rod bearings. They were $210. I ordered a China gasket set. Now this is where I got really dodgy with this build, because the cost of breaking a motor down and putting it back together, there's a lot of gaskets and all that sort of stuff, and if you use genuine gaskets, it gets really expensive. But I bought a complete N54 gasket set from China for 250 bucks. That included sump gasket, rocker cover gasket, lots of O-rings, seals, you name it, it was there, including the head gasket, which I might have just mentioned, but that was 250 Australian dollars. Now, I didn't end up using the head gasket out of that Chinese kit because the coating that they have around the water galleries had actually chipped off. So just poor packaging on the Chinese supplier's behalf, but I just felt a little bit nervous about using the Chinese head gasket, and I ended up using an L-ring, which I kind of regret now anyway, but we'll talk about that later. Oem Head Bolts. Now, I paid about 100 Australian dollars for standard genuine BMW OEM head bolts, although I never ended up using them because I had the issue with torquing. New Vanos bolts were $20 and cam ledge bolts were $75, both genuine for the last two. Now, I mentioned that I had the issue with the torquing. Now, this was the first motor I'd ever assembled from scratch. I had been watching Jay from Real Street, and he uses automatic transmission fluid for a lot of cleaning and assembly lube procedures. However, you don't know what you don't know, and I was using ATF on the head bolts. So when we did my original engine that's now blown up in my E92, we used engine oil to lube the head bolts. That is what Jake, the BMW mechanic, has always used, and he never had any issues with engine oil. You just don't put too much on so that basically you can hydrolock the head bolts into the block. So I didn't use too much, and I think that's what caught me out. So I was using ATF, and I was basically getting thread bind at the higher, or the last part of the torque sequence. I thought it was going tight and then pulling the threads in the block, but it was going tight and binding. And yeah, I just didn't know. I messed up. I used the wrong lube. But that led me down the path of a load more money to spend because I thought I needed to repair the block. Turns out I didn't. But then I couldn't get head bolts, and I ended up going for a 12mm head bolt upgrade. I actually bought 3 different sets of 12mm head bolts. I bought Nissan ZD30 head bolts, Hyundai, I can't remember what they were, but it was a diesel Hyundai head bolt set, and a Mercedes head bolt set from like the 90s. And they were $50, $60, and $45 respectively. They were all aftermarket from Nascent Engine Parts, and it wasn't a lot of money. But yeah, I bought quite a few different bolts to have a play with. And on O'Reilly's block that we blew up, I drilled and I tapped and I tested and I tested and I see what we could talk things down to. And I also bought a $20 tap, and I also had to buy another L-ring. Well, I had an L-ring head gasket, but that cost me $200 as well. So all in all, I spent another about $350 bolting the head onto the engine. This has lost track. But all in all, assembling the motor, I seem to spend around $2,600. I will put the exact figure on the screen. So that is the engine sitting on the stand, ready to go back in the car with forged rods, forged pistons, ACL bearings, assembled, ready to go. There is a video series on it. Go back and watch it if you're interested in seeing how it all went down. But that was the long and short of it. So it wasn't a lot of money. but basically a forged engine for 2,600 Australian dollars. It sounds like a winner, right? Don't forget it knocks. I then also spent, off the top of my head, now these figures I can't remember exactly, and just take them with a pinch of salt, but something you need to keep in mind. You will need engine oil. I spent about $100 on that. You will need a filter. I put a new drive belt on it. I changed the spark plugs. In Australia, they're 180 Australian dollars. We had to get the AC regassed. That was a cashie from a mate for $100 and $60 worth of coolant. So the whole thing was actually under 3,000 Australian dollars, which is pretty mega. And if I didn't have this knock, I'd be super, super happy with it. I may still be happy with it. I'm just not confident enough to tell you guys that it's right, because it might not be right. I think it's okay. I'm still going to use it. I still want to get this car out on track. I want to go roll racing. I've actually paid for a track day. I just haven't been able to get there because of all the shite that's going on lately. But that's what it cost. Under 3,000 Australian dollars. That's kind of what I thought it was going to cost to do my forged build. And we got there in the end. Now, what would I do differently? I think the next time I do an engine, and I'm going to do another one because I've got to build a motor for the E92 now. That has come about because Ken is a friggin' legend. He has ordered me an upgraded clutch for my E92. We will talk about more of that later on. But if he's doing the clutch, I need to assemble another built motor. I've still got the China rods and pistons, the Kintec ones. So we're going to use them, and we're going to have two forge builds side by side, and we'll know some pros and cons as well. Guys, just keep in mind, I live with my sister at the moment, so getting anything done is quite difficult, but it's happening. It will be happening as soon as I can make it happen. What am I going to do differently? Mainly the head gasket. I've spoken to a few people that have done similar engine builds, and it seems these L-ring head gaskets, it's also an L-ring head gasket in my E92, which has decided to spit coolant. They don't like to seal, not at big power levels. Now, my E92, running those 17Ts at 26, 27 PSI for 2 years, L-ring gasket was not a problem. Put the single turbo on it, hits 28 PSI, and it spits the gasket straight away. So I'm hoping this one stays together. There's been no sign of it leaking yet, keeping in mind that this head does have the 12mm bolts, and they are torqued to a higher torque level than an N54 head bolt. So hopefully this one will stay together. It's not going to spit coolant with the L-ring. But the next one, regardless, I'm going to switch to an Athena head gasket, which is not so budget, but I think it's the way to go forwards, and it's how a couple of people that have had problems with the L-ring have fixed their engine coolant spitting issues. So we're going to go to Athena head gasket. I'm going to change up the 12mm head bolts. It was the ZD30 ones that I actually used in this engine. I'm going to switch it up to N57 M50D head bolts. They are 12mm longer than an N54, and I think I'm going to drill the block deeper. So that's what I'm going to do. I've been talking to a guy from Poland that's done it. I think that's going to be the way I'm going to do it moving forwards. Still on the budget theme, but the ARP solution, it just seems quite expensive, because switching to ARP head studs, you do need to time cert the block, and getting time certs done in Australia is quite expensive. And I kind of want to try another budget option. So I'm going to go for N57 and an Athena head gasket, the Chinese pistons. And if I can con somebody into lending me a micrometer, hopefully I'll be able to actually measure piston and wall clearance. So we've got a little bit more data moving forwards with the budget builds. But that's the video on it. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what I did wrong. Let me know what you think this knock is. Am I dreaming? Is it a problem? Is it fine? Is it piston slap? I really don't know. I'm fogging up in here, which is good. It means we've got a water leak. Something else to fix. Guys, thank you for watching. Yeah, I'll say it again. This is not the right way to build a motor, but you can do it quite cheap. So if you can get your hands on a cheap M54, go for it. One of the big things that you might not have picked up on yet, I don't remove the cranks. By not removing the crank, you don't have to replace main cap bolts. And they are expensive. In Australia, if you want to remove the crank from an N54, it adds about $1,500 in parts. Maybe it's about $2,000, but it adds a huge cost to getting the engine reassembled. It's like 50% again. So my take, if you're trying to do it on a budget, if the crank's no good, it ain't going to be a budget. Just do it all properly. Get an engine shop to do everything. But if you've got a motor with a good crank, just a cracked ringland, good balls, don't take the crank out. And that's what I'm going to do on my next one. Guys, thank you again. That's the truth. Also, you want to see it on a dyno? I don't like dynos, but I kind of want to dyno it, mainly because I'll be able to listen to that noise under load from outside the car when it's not moving down the road. I really want to hear what that noise is, but let me know if you want to see it on a dyno, and I'll see if I can make it happen. Maybe in the next week or so. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Peace.